Welcome everyone to Tales from the Trenches Tuesdays. Today I am speaking with my friend Paul Nazareth. Paul has worked in Canada's philanthropic sector for over 20 years and is a well-known source of insight on the intersection of technology and money. Currently Vice President of the Canadian Association of Gift Planners, Paul was previously Vice President at the charity Canada Helps. He's been a philanthropic advisor with a national wealth management firm and spent 15 years working with charities from universities to churches. Paul is on the board of several charities, including the Circle on Indigenous Philanthropy and on the Advisory Council of Carleton University's Masters in Philanthropy and Nonprofit Leadership program. He serves as a faculty for the Master Financial Advisor in Philanthropy program, led by CAGP, the Knowledge Bureau, and Spire Philanthropy, and is a frequent instructor for the tax and advisor community through organizations like CPA, Advocates, and estate planning councils. Paul writes for a variety of publications and regularly appears on national radio and TV to speak about personal generosity in Canada. So, welcome, Paul.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, I've known Paul actually for a real long time. I think I first knew Paul when he worked on the dark side for a bank years ago, and I think that's how we first kind of got to know each other through the Canadian Association of Gift Planners. But I really wanted to have Paul on to talk a little bit. You know, he has a personal philanthropy journey, but I wanted to start and talk a little bit about, you know, how were the discussions around your dinner table when you were growing up about philanthropy? How did those kind of manifest themselves?
You know, they were very explicit and deliberate in that our family was, we're a very faith-based family. Grew up in churches, and actually before a bank, I worked for the Pope for a number of years. And that whole church community, as a teenager, I was hanging off the back of food collection trucks. I was put on the streets to sell chocolate almonds in fundraising. And like a lot of fundraisers, I was always the kid setting the records in school for fundraising. But as a family, we really would talk about it as goals, as volunteerism, as public generosity. It was a topic of conversation about how we expressed who we are. And that was kind of what pushed me past fundraising. And frankly, as a child, I grew to hate fundraising. I still am kind of allergic to chocolate almonds. If I see them, I gag. But there really was that cultural and faith connection.
And did your parents specifically talk about kind of like the sum of money that they would give, or was it more about just being a good person and, you know, volunteering and, you know, lending your time, treasure, and talent, and without a necessarily strong focus on financial?
You know, when I reflected on it later, that was maybe my challenge and frustration. We always talked about the goal, you know, what we're trying to do, what we're trying to participate in, how we're trying to help. And actually, there wasn't the outcomes-minded kind of mindset, which even as a kid frustrated me. Again,
Right.
most people don't know, I was there at the founding of Canada Helps as an organization, because one of the young computer engineers who built it was a kid I was babysitting. And this kid was a genius. He came home from university for Christmas, and his mom forced him to go to church. And sitting in that pew, he and his friends looked at that collection plate and said, "This is how you collect money?" Which is what I say to organizations in 2022. You know, I was just talking to a colleague today who said we've got special events and asking questions about how money and technology works. And I said to them with great respect, and it's one of my favorite jokes, but it's the truth. Drug dealers use Square, Stripe, Tap, and all that. And here we are looking like medieval pirates saying, "Do you have doubloons on you or gold teeth or something?" It's ridiculous. You know, we have got
Right.
to really bring ourselves into the economy where we belong, because we are part of this economy and our country's prosperity. And, you know, technology and
Right.
all those things has to come along with it. And that's why I went to a bank and other places, we will be leapfrogged by the capitalism that sometimes we exist to counteract.
Everyone talks about this huge transfer of wealth that's going to be occurring over the next 10, 15, 20 years. We're probably just at the start of it. And the boomers themselves are the most successful cohort in history. And they're going to be inheriting all this money from the traditionalist generation, their folks. They don't need the money. So do you see that we are well set up to start promoting? I hate the term planned giving because I think any meaningful gift is a planned gift. I would think of it more as bequest giving or deferred giving. But do you think that we're doing a good job on educating folks about that, or do you think that we have a whole lot to learn?
As always, as a sector, we do the best we can. And we struggle very often because our mindset, and this is, again, one of the reasons why at times I leave the community to find energy, power, and motivation, because in entrepreneurial communities and others, there's an abundance mindset, there's an ambitious mindset, and very often we just try to do good with well enough. And that's not good enough for me. Again, wonderfully enough to be connected to when Canada Helps as an organization was scaling. And again, for CAGP, for me, it's kind of a coming home. There's a bunch of things we've got to push past. One of them is the words we use. We use clunky, obtuse, jargony language. If I could be done with planned giving, I'd be done with the words planned giving. We're trying to say gift planning, strategic philanthropy. The word that I've really honed in on personally, and many of my colleagues, in fact, you'll see I'm doing a bit of a rebrand on social media, is generosity. Most generous people don't think of themselves as philanthropists. This is a very Canadian cultural, humble, again, those boomers who know what they don't need. And the ones who've deeply thought about it are saying, I'm just trying to help. I'm not trying to be some big highfalutin philanthropist, etc. And especially in the world of asset-based giving where tax and wealth come into play. And again, this wealth transfer isn't turning out the way we thought. Right? Again, we know boomers, even Gen X and others, are the sandwich generation, taking care of parents who are living to be well over 100, right? We just got a StatsCan update. Almost 10,000 Canadians over the age of 100. And healthy and wealthy. So part of this too is we've got to adapt to how everything from the economy to aging and society, how this is all playing out.
I've always found that it was interesting when I chatted with potential donors about leaving a bequest, that it was much easier to become one of many. So if someone has the idea that they're leaving a bequest in their will, usually they're leaving it to numerous charities, and it was a relatively easier task to be one, just added on to that list than to convince someone of the merit of leaving a charity in their will. Furthermore, I found that some of the uber wealthy folks were exceptionally generous during their life, but refused to leave a bequest. And their theory was kind of like every generation should row its own boat. I'm going to give it to my kids. If they want to give it away, let them fill their boots. That's great. Let them do with what they want, but I don't want to predicate that for them. So what are your thoughts on that?
We are seeing that shift. Again, wonderfully enough, we've got intel from our partners in the community of advisors in tax, financial, and estate planning, and they're kind of our forward-thinking intel into that world. Most charities outside of advancement, higher ed, don't have access to high net worth, ultra high net worth donors, and that advisor world does. And more of them are doing things like taking our joint designation, the Master Financial Advisor in Philanthropy. So we're starting to hear back from them, right? Family wealth teams are exploding in that area. And we're finally hearing from them as we move from the traditional generation to the baby boom generation who've been innovators and troublemakers all the way through. And they even said, I watched my parents save for what? And it did not have the impact they intended. And so many of them have said, I'm going to drive into heaven with the wheels coming off this thing. I'm going to give it away in life. And their entrepreneurial spirit and different spirits are really showing up. Great quote from Warren Buffett when he said, I want to give my kids enough that they can do anything, but not too much that they'll do nothing. And as we hear now from many family wealth teams, they're actually using philanthropy to teach values.
Well, Paul, if folks wanted to get hold of you, how would they go about doing that?
Again, as people know, I'm someone who talks about networking and that concept of being findable, available. So you know what? Google me. Because if you're looking for the suit, you'll find me on LinkedIn. If you're looking for the conversation, you'll find me on Twitter. If you're looking for the experimentation, you'll find me on TikTok. I'm rebranding, and that's how I want to be known in the next phase of my career. I'm calling myself the generosity guy. Again, we just get
That's
lost in
amazing.
plan giving, endowments, and fundraising. As people can find me in these spaces, connect with me in the way that speaks to you. And I want to be there. This is my passion for our community, for our colleagues, to help create prosperity and everything in their lives.
That's amazing. Thanks so much, Paul. Thanks for joining.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. As always, so much fun.
Hi, folks. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button right here.